So hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. Ooh, I'm so excited for this. I mentioned in my last reaction that I have notes. I have so many notes, and I have rewatched the last episode and I have made like 3 extra pages of notes just on the last episode. I probably should let it sit with me a little bit more. Did I even say what this video is? I didn't. Oh. I hope you read the title. This is a review of season 2 of Interview with the Vampire. It's a review, it's a chat, it's a dissection, it's everything, alright? It's just all things season 2 Interview with the Vampire. I probably should have waited to sit with the finale a little bit longer so I could draw more comparisons and parallels. I've watched it 3 times already, since yesterday. 3. So I just want to get into it, I just want to talk. If you watched my Interview with the Vampire reactions, thank you so much. I got some wonderful comments from people, I really did. It's such a welcoming fandom. Of course, there was also some not nice comments. I got called all kinds of names for some of my takes, which, you know, is understandable. I mean, there's a lot of diehard fans of the books and the franchise itself outside of the show that then come into the show with all this knowledge and all this knowing of stuff. And I'm really new to all of this, to Interview. I watched season 1 when it came out in 2022, and then I read the book, and then I read the Vampire Lestat. But I, like, hyperfixation, okay? Hyperfixation to the strongest degree. I sped through them with the audiobooks, and then I tried to read them. I read both of them, but I feel like I didn't absorb them enough, so I'm going back and listening to them again. I'm halfway through Queen of the Damned, and I'm not, like, powering through it. I'm trying to take my time with it and to absorb stuff, but my brain is just not in absorption mode. Anyway, you don't give a shit. Okay, so this show came out and I watched it in 2022, back when season 1 came out. And I just want to preface by saying, before we get started with all the dissection and all the fun theories and the parallels and the talking about season 2, this show is so incredibly important to me. I have never felt connection to media, I think ever, like I do with this. It isn't just I love the show. This isn't just it's a fun TV show, wow I love it, or you know, that I found it at a time in my life when I needed it. It's not that. It's, I actually feel connected to it. You know, I've watched a lot of like LGBT plus media, and I've read a lot of media that deals with topics like that, and I just have never felt connected or seen through them. I've watched them and appreciated them and enjoyed them, but I've never actually felt connected or seen in a way that like knocks the air out of my chest. And I did with this, and I think that's I'm gonna start crying. It's a show. Come on, girl. But I think that's why it's become so important to me and why I do love it so much. Anyway, but like particularly with Louis's character, like going back to the beginning of Interview, back to season 1, when he's struggling with who he is, when he's struggling with his sexuality, when he first gets with Lestat, and the confession scene, the speech he gives in the confession scene. He has these roots in me, and the shame and the self-loathing and the fear that Louis feels. I mean, I felt all that. And I just, dude, I connected with his character from that exact moment and latched onto him, and I will defend him until the end. I don't care what he does. There you go, I don't care. I did get some shit from people because I was defending Louis during the trial, and I was kind of like taking stabs at Lestat because like it's the perfect case of unreliable narrator. Not even necessarily unreliable narrator, even though it is. Was it raining Louis? We established that back in season 1, I'm aware. You enter the show with Louis, he's the narrator. He tells you what's what. You grow, well, if you're me, you grow to love him and connect with him and really bond with him in a way that's like stronger than, for me, any other character. It's a stronger bond than any other character in the show that I have with him. So then, like, you know, you see him at the trial and Lestat is giving his side of the story, which is true. 2 sides of a story can be true at once. 2 people can experience the same thing in very different ways. I understand that. But I just felt attacked. I felt like Louis was being talked over and silenced, because he was. He wasn't allowed to speak at his own trial. Even though, like, Lestat was just recalling his side of things, I don't know, it set something off on me. So I defend Louis, okay? I defend him. I love him. I see myself in him in certain aspects. So I don't apologise for siding with him no matter what. We will talk about all the characters though. Oh my god. I'm so excited. Okay, we're going to start at the end, okay? Can I get up my notes section on my computer so I don't have to keep looking down at my phone? I can. Oh my god. Okay, so season 2. I had high hopes going into it. It surpassed any hopes that I had for it. It soared. I love it. I haven't had time to live with it like I've lived with season 1, but I have a feeling I'm going to love it just as much as season 1. The ending, in my opinion, was perfect. We ended the Interview with the Vampire storyline so perfectly. The book was 2 seasons and it wrapped it up so deliciously. I think it's a bit strange that season 3, it's just going to be Interview with the Vampire season 3, given the fact that we're moving on to the Vampire Lestat, we're moving on to a new book. So I think it's strange that I guess for franchising purposes, you got to keep the same name or it'll probably get confusing to try and advertise it and to try and, push it and stuff. But yeah, one of the major things that I love about this show, and particularly this season, is the fact that I love all of the characters. I can see parts, and again, this is all from personal experience. I can see parts of myself in all of them. I can sympathise with all of them. Even when I'm mad at characters or when I feel wronged, double-crossed by characters, you see this humanity, this glimmer of a person in them that is so raw and real. And do you know what's funny? Okay, I got a little bit tipsy last night and I was I was listening to one of my favourite songs. El Tango de Roxanne from Moulin Rouge is one of my favourite pieces of music of all time, alright? And I was listening to it and I was getting all emotional because I was tipsy and I was thinking of Interview with the Vampire, and it's like this show makes me feel exactly how that song makes me feel. It's drama, it's love, it's revenge, it's hurt, it's jealousy, it's rage, it's lust, it's everything. The show is a masterpiece and it just keeps building and building and swelling until you get these moments of absolute insane release, be it sad moments or happy moments or romantic moments. I mean, it's such a beautiful adaptation, I think. Speaking is my job. It's based on the book. Obviously the book is the blueprint, but it is a beautiful take. It's an adaptation, so it has to change, it has to adapt and switch things on screen. Some of them are going to fall flat, some of them are going to be brilliant. In my opinion, there's not a single thing that I did not like. But I'm not that invested in the books as other people am, I know. But the show, it's just so sensual and gritty and real, and it's ugly and it's raw and it's like real life. There's moments that are just so true to life. I spent 8 minutes just talking about how much I love the show. We haven't even gotten onto the review, but I'm trying to explain to you guys how and why I love it. And also, I'm not an expert in anything. Yeah, so go easy on me in the comments, please. I'm just so excited to be talking about this. Alright, so we gotta talk about the big reveal. The big reveal. Armand has taken me on a fucking ride. I was grand with him in season 1. He was just the iPad kid zooming around the place. Season 2, listen, I am a Lestat truther. Louis and Lestat are my end game. So season 1 ends with him going, "It's Vampire Armand, he's the love of my life." And I was like, but no, he's not, because Lestat is. And again, that might be a testament to how fucked in the head I am, given everything that happened with Louis and Lestat in season 1 and how they ended things. I was still like, but they could still get back together, but it could still work out. And again, this is gothic romance. It's messy. It is, like I said, raw and ugly at times. So I understand Lestat is not perfect. Neither is Louis. Neither is Armand. The relationships are not perfect. But it's gothic romance. Before anyone attacks me for being like, I liked them as a couple, I'm going, well, he did this. I know. But Armand, throughout the season, I guess we'll just touch on some things with Armand. His backstory, I think, where you got to see him, where he came from, the fact that he was with Lestat, it fleshed him out and it made me sympathise with him and truly fall in love with him in a way that I wasn't expecting to. He told his backstory about how he got turned, how his childhood was, the abuse that he endured, the abuse he continued to endure after getting turned. And then, he says it to Daniel, that he'd never said "I love you," he'd never said those words to anybody in a very long time until Louis. So he had been through shit, right? Lestat kind of used him. Lestat used him to get to learn or to know more about vampirism and powers and stuff, and then left him. Armand has been done wrong and abandoned by almost everybody, if not everybody, in his life. There is a really frightened child side to him that I connected with and understood. And you really do get to see that touched upon throughout the season. Especially with the Arun and the Metra titles that Louis and Armand have for each other. When it's said you have that transferal of power, of dynamics in the relationship. And I had it wrong. I thought Armand was the more dominant one in the relationship, that he was, he had the upper hand or whatever. It was Louis. Louis did. And we see that throughout the season. And again, we'll touch on certain points between them as a couple. But I just think it's so fucking interesting. He was with Lestat and he was with Louis as well. And I think learning about him and his past, I get it. I get why he lied. I understand why he took the out when it was presented to him. When Louis asked him, Louis was drawn on the floor trying to plot how he was going to like burn the theatre to the ground. And Armand was calling to him mentally and he was like, please let me explain, let me whatever. Louis put it out there like, did you save me? And I think Armand was just so baffled by the fact that an out had presented itself, a way back into Louis' life had presented itself, that he just took it. Was it a shitty thing to do? Was it manipulative and self-serving? Yeah. But he took it, and I can't really blame him. As much as I hate him for it, I'm like, this is somebody who does not want to lose this one connection that he has. And especially with the fight, then you don't see the fight, which I loved. I loved that you don't see the fight. It takes place in another room. Daniel's trying to like close up his computer, get all of his stuff in order. Louis and Armand go off to a different room where you hear the bang, and then you see the fact that Armand has been smacked up against the wall. Beautiful little head sitting on the floor all sad. Again, like we saw in an earlier episode, it's a throwback. I love these throwbacks and these parallels. You see Armand and Louis looking at this wall trying to figure out what to do with it. In the end, there's a Armand-shaped hole inside the wall. Once the truth comes out, you know, it's little things like that. Like, what are we going to do with it? We're going to throw your lies at the wall and then break up with you. I just do. Armand as a character is probably... I don't even think... Louis is my one, okay? But I don't think I have a favourite. Because every time I think I do, I look at another character and I'll go, oh my God, I am you. There's bits of me in you. There's bits of you and me. I love you. But then, yeah, it's a cycle. Anyway, so keeping on the big reveal. I just think it's weird that, like, Louis would leave Armand alone with Daniel, given the fact Daniel brought all this out into the open. Yes, I know, oh my God, the vampire Sam was an informant for the Telemasker. What the fuck? What? Did not see that coming. Sam is just an enigma of a character, really. But he leaves Daniel alone. I mean, he does tell Armand, like, you're not to touch him. I'll kill you. And I guess Louis underestimated him, or he thought that maybe, like, we have enough built up over our time together, and you understand me as a person to know that I mean what I say, so don't hurt him. And then Armand, like, was like, oh, suddenly I forgot how to hear. What? I didn't hear that. Daniel, come hither. I'm a bit sad that he got turned off camera, to be fair. I would have liked to have seen it, but at the same time, was it necessary to see him turning? Probably not. I mean, it's going to be a huge part of season 3, him being in the vampire world now and all that, and the book that he wrote. So it sets it up nicely, but I would have liked to have seen him be turned. Moving from the confession on to the Lestat and Louis scene back in New Orleans. When I say this is some of the best acting I think I've ever seen, truly, everything from how they look at each other, to how he's kind of sarcastic and whatever when Louis first comes in, to how he looks at Louis as Louis starts to walk closer to him, to the fact that once Louis admits why he's there and he's like, it was you, why didn't you tell me? That now it's out in the open. And Lestat was like, well, you know, I don't like to brag, or whatever it was that he said. And then he was like, yeah, but I saved you, it was me. Like, from that to the fact that once Louis came out in the open and said, like, I'm sorry, I thought it was a curse, I didn't realise it was a gift, and I made you miserable. It's like it opened something when Lestat heard that, because then Lestat breaks down, that facade breaks down, and you so rarely see that with Lestat. He truly crumbles. We start talking about the night that Armand called Lestat, and his voice break when he asks him, did you hurt yourself? That after all of these years, he knew the date and the time that call came through on the vamp radio. He knew the date and the time. He has lived with this and been haunted by this. Both performances in this scene, stellar. But maybe my favourite thing about this is the fact that once they do open up and start talking about Claudia, her name isn't even said. They can't say her name. It's so painful. Like, Lestat opens up about that she looked to him, and he said, like, as if I was her father. And the hug and the embrace. And I want to know what was said to Lestat when they hug each other. Louis, it looks, maybe I'm wrong, but it looks like Louis says something, whispers something into his ear, and then looks at him. And then they hug again. And it is such a beautiful moment of closure for them. I'm staying in delusional town. I don't know enough about the books, the stories to know what happens. But in my head, they're going to get back together. It's too soon for that yet. I understand. They're going to get back together at some stage, though. I have a note here in the notes section that just says the blood tear. Oh, yeah, I'm a sucker for all. Did you know when they cry blood? That's the thing, though, about their characters. Both of them have come from such broken moments. They both have horrible moments that have happened to them throughout their storylines. So has everybody, to be fair. Everybody has experienced something. everybody, all of the vampires have been made from pain and like disruption. Look at Claudia's beginning. Look at Armand's beginning. Look at Lestat. Look at Louis. Look at Daniel's. Everybody has some sort of trauma, but Louis and Lestat share the bond of the time they spent together and Claudia. And nobody understands it like them. And I love that Claudia's words of the stormy romance of you two was echoed literally in the scene with the storm smacking the windows off of the house outside. I also have a note that just says, "Hey Siri." Hearing Lestat in modern day talk to Siri. I also liked the end as well. That season 1 ended with a close-up of Louis saying he's the love of my life. And then, actually, I think it was a close shot for that, and then it panned out to a shot of him and Armand. But season 2 ended with a close-up of Louis meaning business. He was calling all of those fucks that were threatening him with their minds. And I loved that it was set in, like, kind of his grave room, or his, like, room of remembrance. You have Paul's portrait on the wall, and you have Claudia's dress. His brother and his sister. He's made peace with all the shit that's happened to him, and I just... Oh... Before we go any further, I'm fucking on this hash because nobody told me I was having a really bad hair day. Fuck all of you for not telling me. I think this makes it worse. Yes, it does. Wow. If I pull it back, can I get a cute little pixie moment where it's popping out? No? Okay. Alright, so we're just going to go back to the start of season 1, okay? No, we're not. We're going back to the start of season 2. We're going to go back and, because I have notes done episode by episode, and then we'll wrap it up again by coming back to the end. Armand didn't want me to do the interview. And then Daniel says that he's been interviewed by he's interviewed fake bitches before. They all put up a facade. It eventually breaks. Foreshadowing. We know that now. And I have notes made on Louis and Armand's relationship here that was so interesting. He asks Armand, "Can I see the pages that we removed?" And Armand says, "We made an agreement. My name is in some of those pages." Power move. So I made this point before throughout the reactions where the bookcase is floating. Louis can't fly. It's not one of his powers. Well, I don't think it's one of his powers. We haven't seen him fly, even though he has Lestat's blood in him, so maybe he can. He just never learned to. No one taught him yet. But he has the fire gift. But Armand can fly, and we know that. The bookcase is up in the sky. Louis loves to read. He loves literature. He can't get to the bookcase. So if he wants a book down, he's going to have to either pull out a fucking ladder or ask Armand to get it down. Little subtle power plays like that. Very... We also get a shot of them in bed together. When they're in front of Armand at the beginning of the season, they're like nearly sitting in each other's laps, right? It's all very like lovey-dovey. But then you see them together in bed and it's not. There's nearly a person-shaped gap between them. They're the complete polar opposite sides of the bed. So we see the little cracks showing there. I also made a note that says the house is sterile. It's like a show house, unlike Louis and Lestat's home. So, you know, I'm guessing this was done purposefully and intentionally. Their home is very like modern art style, Louis and Armand's house. It's cold and there's not a whole lot of personality in it. I mean, we do have the room with the rocks, which we later learn is like Louis has reclaimed that from when he was in the coffin in the rocks. Now he uses it as a form of like relaxing himself or grounding himself. So there is that room that is a bit of personality, I guess, with the tree as well that we can assume that Armand planted, because we saw Armand in a later episode with a branch or a flower or something from one of those trees before they moved into the Dubai house. But their home, it's sterile, it's cold. Like I said, there's not a lot of personalities. There's no them in it. Whereas when you look at Louis and Lestat's house back in season 1, it oozes with personality. There's books everywhere. There's stuff everywhere. You know, you see their closets, you see their clothes, their slippers near their coffin. It's so personal and warm. Of course, I have the "it's you and me and you" noted. That speech. If you were the last vampire, it would be enough. While we're on that point, I just want to focus in on Claudia because wow. And I was a little bit skeptical about her being recast because I was like, I loved Claudia in season 1. How is season 2 going to work with a new actress playing her? But Delaney, she perfectly encapsulated the place where Claudia is in her life in season 2. I feel like both actresses, they both, thumbs up to both of them. They both managed to show such different sides to Claudia, because Claudia in season 1 is a completely different character to who she is in season 2. So I just feel like it worked really well. But Claudia also was born from such horror and anguish. I mean, everything she knew got burnt down. That was the start of her new life, where Louis asked Lestat to turn her, and then she ends in fire as well because the sun burns her. And her cradling Madeline to her chest. Oh, Madeline was the only one I think that truly loved Claudia more than anything in the world. More than anything. I was a bit skeptical when Madeline got turned. Sorry. I was like, I don't know, she might leave her. I don't know. She didn't. And even up on that stage during the trial, when she was given the out, she was given the choice, she said, my coven is Claudia. she is the only character who truly put Claudia before every person else that there is. Louis loved her very deeply. Lestat loved her in his own way, even though he was not a great father. But Madeleine and her, and even to the very end, she was a badass. Her asking that guy to take off his hat so she could see the last face, the last missing piece of everybody in the theatre, and then her saying like, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna fucking haunt you, I'm gonna fucking kill you, and even if there's no afterlife, I'll still find a way. That gives me hope. Yes, it's a very badass thing to say before her death, but at the same time it gives me hope that maybe we will see her. I mean, we had Dream Lestat all this season. We might get her back in flashbacks, and I hope we do. But at the same time, maybe I don't hope we do, because that means Louis is probably going to be haunted by her and having visions of her. But if he had, we probably would have seen it already, because a lot of time has passed since the trial, since she passed. Anyway, I think it's strange that we never saw, you know, the promo images? I have one of them there. The red promo images for season 2. We got a lovely one of Claudia wearing a red dress and she looks stunning. We never saw the dress in the show. But I do love that we had the time filled in where Louis and Claudia were, how they got to where they did, how they ended up with the theatre. I like how that was handled. Moving on then, we got Armand's backstory. I think I touched on that. I really did. I loved that. The whole cast is so stupid beautiful. Oh my God. The talent in this cast is off the charts. But on top of that, they are all blessed with their faces. Okay. But I loved his recount of meeting Lestat for the first time. We saw Nikki. We got to see Lestat and Nikki walking around the place. And the rage that bursts out of Lestat when Armand knocks Nikki out or takes Nikki and Armand is on the floor. He's overpowered by him. Lestat is on the floor, overpowered by him. The names are going fucky in my head. But the rage that we see from him. And then him walking down with the crucifix over his shoulder into the basement. It's like, dude, it's Lestat. He is the most flamboyant, over-the-top bitch ever. And I love him. I can't figure out, do I love him or do I want to be him? We also got the Kill Me Again scene between Louis and Lestat. This, again, it's still Dream Lestat. But around this time, the scene where Louis is out walking and he projects Lestat onto somebody. Also, we dealt a bit with Daniel and his sexuality this season too. I know it was, a lot of people were talking or theorising over that in season 1, but in season 2, we had Armand saying to Daniel that he's recounted something that Daniel had said. You'd only do her if she had a paper bag over her head. Armand and Daniel's relationship this whole season as well was so... Yes. Because Daniel is this external threat to Armand. Daniel's just a human. He's immortal, as Armand puts it. But he's a threat because he's smart and he's going to pick apart things. And I feel like Armand can't mould him and smooth things over with him the way he can with Louis, and Armand knows this. And also, you know, you're going back to the past, you're dredging up old memories, old things, you're rereading the diaries, and especially knowing what we know about Armand, that must have been such a stressful time. My boy must have been sweating bricks and like having explosive diarrhea in the bathroom from stress. I don't think vampires do that. He must have been crying blood in the corner by himself at night time from stress. The photo thing is something that still kind of has me though. So we had that scene where, you know, we're learning more about Louis. We're seeing a different side to Louis. And we also see the scene with the folder where there's photos in there that aren't his. And he says it to Armand. He's like, what are these doing in here? And Armand tries to tell him, maybe somebody else put them in there. And Louis was like, no. Who did that then? Did Armand do that? Did Armand put the pictures into the folder? Did Louis do it and he just couldn't remember? Because I don't know. I loved the moment between Claudia and Louis as well, where she throws back that it's you and me and you, where she goes, it's you and him and you. I don't blame her for being mad. Claudia was brought into this world by Louis and Lestat and then had to deal with the fuckery of what happened in season 1 and then to move straight on to another place. I know like lots of years passed, but to move on to another place and to have to deal with Louis, the only other person in your life, falling in love with someone else. And it's like, again, dude, like, it's somebody else above me. I'm nobody's number one. The breakup scene got me so bad. You've Lestat in the suit and he says like, this was your favourite? Why? And then he tells him that he had his names or his initials stitched into the... And it was also a pivotal moment for their relationship. There's certain scenes that stick out for Louis and Armand throughout season 2. The bench scene was one. The scene where he tells Armand that he's going to turn Madeleine, or he asks Armand to turn Madeleine. The topic of her being turned comes up. And Armand says, like, don't tell me this. Like, my mind isn't strong enough. I won't be able to protect this from the coven. And then Louis asks him to be there. And you get there, are you asking her or are you telling? And again, it's that side to him that is so what's the word I'm looking for? What is the word I'm looking for? It completely disarms me. Like, Armand, he's a manipulator, obviously. But he does love Louis in his own way, okay? That is just my opinion. But you see this want from him that he just wants to please him. He's always trying to figure out what it is that Louis wants. What does he want from him? How can he make him happy? And you see it in that moment where he goes, are you asking or are you telling? On the topic of Armand and the fuckery that surrounded that whole situation, so Louis and Daniel come to the conclusion that Armand had been doing some mind stuff to them, or had done mind stuff to them. Why did Armand ever leave them alone together? Unless, was it a Lestat thing? You remember how he wanted Lestat to come in and like dismantle the old coven to kind of free Armand back when Armand and Lestat first met? Was it something similar? Was it subconsciously he wanted this to come out into the open? Because he left Daniel and Louis alone together, knowing they were going to be conversing alone without his interruption. He went off to feed. He went off to have dinner and then came back wearing those fucking ski goggles. Oh my God, what a choice. But the desperation that we see from Louis and Daniel in that moment where he's going to come back, he's nearly here, try and remember. And Daniel's there like, fuck. A point as well that a lot of people brought up is the fact that after the moment on the rooftop, which is, there's certain moments with Louis that just break my heart because he's a gorgeously written character. I love him. But there's certain moments that hurt because, like I said, I see parts of me in him and in his story. And the rooftop scene is one of them. But a lot of people were making the point that Armand could have healed him when he was in the bed and he was calling for Armand. I don't think it's that clear how much time passed between him being on the roof and Armand like giving him his blood and healing him or putting him to coffin. That whole episode was just an absolute masterpiece. It played out like a play, like something you'd see on a stage in the West End or on Broadway or something. It was just that moment between the two of them, Louis and Armand now I'm talking about, where it all comes out in the open, all of the rage and the things that they've been sitting on. Louis yelling at him that he's boring. The one night with Daniel was funner than like all of his life with him. And then Armand snapping. Oh, my life is so hard. My brother threw himself off a roof. My daughter was my sister. Blah, 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 blah. Lestat. It was such a vicious claws out moment. I got to talk to Assad. I got to interview Assad. I know, I can't believe it. If you guys haven't seen the video, we talk about that episode and a lot of moments throughout that happening. So if you're interested in watching that and you haven't yet, I'd suggest go back a few videos. It's a few videos back on my channel. You'll see it. Assad had some really interesting insight and gave some fantastic behind the scenes on that whole episode. But it was really dark, especially that scene with Daniel where Armand sits with Daniel and like after saving Daniel from Louis, Armand sits with him and is preparing him to end it all. He's like, your life is gonna suck anyway, man. Like, come here, I can make it painless, I can make it quick. And it's so hopeless and empty and cold. And again, Louis comes out and tells him like, you're not gonna do this. And you have that moment of kind of like, are you asking or telling again? And it's the power dynamics between the two of them fascinate me. I think I started to say this earlier and I got distracted. Louis has Lestat's blood in him, strong bloodline, but Armand is so much older. So I would imagine Armand would be stronger, but maybe Louis stronger because of the blood. I don't know, but they fascinate me together. I have another note down here that I completely forgot to bring up. The note just says, everybody stopped wearing masks and we expanded into the bar. So in modern day, when the interview started, Daniel was in Dubai with, I know it started in his house, but when we're in Dubai and the interview's beginning, I'm pretty sure Rashid, or fake Rashid, Armand, they wore masks around him and all of the servers wore masks around him because of the year that it was and the happening that was going down. But then when we see him go to the bar, I think it's episode 6, we see Daniel go to the bar where he meets the dude from the Talamasca for like the first time. There's no masks. And this is like supposed to be around the same time as season 1, isn't it? Because it's all Dubai, it's all modern day storyline where we're having the interview. So it's interesting that they dropped the masks. I have another note here that's just close off, face down. You can read it to me while I fuck. I'm going to need 5 to 10 business days to get over that one. And the way Armand just stands up and is like, right, let's go. We see, I think it's all around that episode actually. I have my notes are kind of jumbled and I don't have them labelled by episode and I really should, but I'm nothing if not disorganised. You see the older Louis jump out of him. You see it when he decides to stand up and be assertive and take charge again, like who he was before he became the vampire Louis, when he was just back in the corridor, you know what I mean, back at home as a human. And you see it come out in certain drips and drabs again throughout this mask, or throughout this episode. And you see the I don't want to say you see the mask slip, because he is a soft and tender character, but there is a harder side to him. So I am glad that was brought back to the surface when it was needed. And you see it as well when he's trying to convince or manipulate Armand into turning Madeline for Claudia, where he's telling him, like, imagine how happy I'll be without Claudia, when she's, like, distracted by Madeline, you know what I mean? And then you see Claudia ask him, like, did you mean that? And he's like, well, it got it done, didn't it? Even though it didn't, because he chose not to turn her, because he's never turned a fucking person before. What the fuck? Until Daniel. Oh, he was, like, heartbroken. He'd never turned anyone who was like, I don't want to. And then broke up with Louis and went, you don't want me to hurt him? Fine. I'm going to make him live forever. And I also think those two scenes in regards to Louis are so fascinating and telling of him as a person. Because he has asked two people. Oh, I was just waiting for the sirens to stop. I got balloons. This computer fascinates me every day of my life. He asked two different people, two different romantic partners, to turn somebody for him on his behalf. He asked Lestat to turn Claudia for him, and he asked Armand to turn Madeline for Claudia, kind of for him, as a favour. When he's asking Lestat, look at how he asks him. He comes to him bearing his soul, crying, sweating, like so emotionally distraught. Now, yes, he's had a very stressful evening and a night, and the fires and the riots that he thinks, you know, is a direct effect of him. It's his fault. There's shame. There's a lot, and he sees this one chance of doing good, of saving someone, and she called him an angel. You know what I mean? He felt a connection to her for whatever reason. But when he goes to Lestat, he's vulnerable. He's open. He's so Louis. But when he asks Armand, he's cold, he's composed, he's calculated. You know, like, he says to Armand, like, okay, he's you can say he's playing a part in that moment because he's with Armand, and his dynamics with Armand are very different to his dynamics with Lestat. But it like I said, it's cold. Like, he says something, I'm paraphrasing here. He says something along the lines of, like, you know, imagine me without her, like when she's distracted by her new vampire. Turner. You know, it's so different tonally, and it speaks to the relationship that they all had together with each other. And I think his relationship with Lestat was always more even-footed and more well-balanced than it was with Armand. I feel like the power dynamics were always all over the place with Armand. That Armand was older and stronger and had more powers. But, you know, Louis had the upper hand in the relationship. Yes, Armand went behind his back and did that shit with the coven and didn't do anything to tell Louis to try and make a plan, to try and figure something out. I know. I feel like there's a more dominant, submissive vibe to Armand and Louis than there was with Louis and Lestat. And I think part of that comes from Louis' background, who he was back when he was working in the quarter, who he had to be when he was just a human, what he had to do, how he had to step up to keep things afloat for him and his family. That aspect of him can come more to the surface when he's with Armand, because you got to take Armand's background into consideration. Like I said, how he was made, where he came from, the trauma he had to experience as a child and throughout his early vampire life. They both assumed the roles that they knew, kind of. And I think that becomes kind of clear in the asking to turn somebody in both those instances. Am I totally reading into something where there's nothing? Probably. And I just twigged it there about Daniel, about Armand, that he turned Daniel and that he hadn't turned anybody before. That the rage he felt, the shame, the guilt, the mortification that he felt at being outed as a liar, as an opportunistic lover, someone that took credit for something they didn't do. That's what drove him to finally turn somebody. He'd never done it before. He didn't want to. He didn't want to be the one in that position of power. Do you get what I mean? Take a shot every time I say, do you get what I mean? I promise you, they won't make it to the end of the video. But that the Louis instance is what pushed him, is what made him want to turn Daniel. It could have been revenge for Daniel outing him. It could be maybe he wanted to try and recreate somewhat of what he had with Louis if he were to turn Daniel, that maybe Daniel would get along with him and stay with him. And I just feel for Armand as well. This video is all over the place. I'm sorry. I'm actually editing right now as I'm recording these bits. Because Armand, I feel like, was always searching for what he needed. He was searching for security, for safety, for somebody to be there, like, forever and to look after him. Like, it comes back to this innocence or childlike streak to him, where even when it's outed that he lied and Louis gets up and leaves the table just before the big fight where Louis flings him into the wall, you don't see anger, really. You see pure fear. And how he's tripping over his words when you can hear him talking to Louis going, he must have lied, it must have been falsified. Like, you know me, we dealt with this so long ago. It's the fear that comes out of him. I feel like Armand has spent his life searching for the person that he needed rather than working on himself. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Rather than trying to become the person that you always needed, he searched for that in external people and external sources. He looked for it in Lestat, and Lestat left him. He looked for it in the coven. The coven kind of got fucked. He looked for it in Louis, and it wasn't quite right, but they made it fit, they made it work. And then this video is very much about the personal and interpersonal relationships rather than anything else. I'm finding that. But I guess that says a lot about me and how I consume the show. Let's talk about the theatre a little bit, because Santiago, the actor, I think his name is Ben Daniels. That's a point that I have on this season. I wish we had seen more of Santiago. I wish he had more of a prominent role, because he was spellbinding. And while we're on the topic of performances, yes, this is editing me popping in again, because I want to talk about the performances. This season for acting is probably the strongest season we've ever had. Episode 1 is still my favourite episode in history of any TV show of season 1, the pilot episode. But this episode is right up there with performances. Sam Reed, during the scene, the "Did you hurt yourself" scene, I can't even talk about that. For Louis, if we're talking about Jacob, my favourite performance from Jacob this season, it probably either would be that same scene or where he was, I'm trying to think of a name for the scene, the coffin scene, where Armand calls to Lestat and Louis in the coffin is like, no, don't, like, no. Either that scene for Louis or the "it's you and me, it's me and you." That reduced me to fucking tears. Claudia, my favourite moment this whole season was the "take off your hat please." That whole sequence, it embodied her as a character, and I love her. If we're talking about Armand, we had an awful lot of very good moments from him this season. My favourite moment was a moment that he didn't even speak in. The scene after it's outed that he had lied about saving Louis, and it's after Louis throws him into the wall and he's lying on the floor. His body language, his body acting for that scene blew me the fuck away. He looks so angelic and beautiful, but broken and bruised physically and mentally, and he's just slumped on the floor looking up at Louis. He says more with his face and body in that than any speech I've seen this season from him. He is incredible. Daniel, I think my favourite performance from Daniel this whole season was when he was on that talk show and he was absolutely laying into that guy. Oh my god. Truly, we had some... This show, I keep saying it, I don't understand why the show isn't more well known. The acting is unlike anything I have seen in television. It's unlike anything I have seen in fucking years. And if you guys are new here, I cover a few fair amount of shows on YouTube, but on Patreon, I must have covered 20 or 30 shows or more on Patreon. That's outside of what I watch in my private time. TV is my passion. I love it. I have never in my life seen anything like this show. They deserve recognition, and if they don't get it, I swear to fucking God, I'm gonna start self-imploding. I loved the costumes, I loved the theatre and the drama of it all. Even down to like Santiago's final moments where he's running through the sewers and he's talking to Louis and he's trying his hardest to hit Louis where it hurts. Like, he talks about jacking off with Claudia's ashes and he's poking fun at him, and Louis is just honed in. Louis is like, no man, I know what I want and I'm going to get it. You're going to pop up out this grate, and whoosh, and he does. I love how brief that was. You did have the standoff where they're talking to each other telepathically and he's running through the tunnels and Louis waiting for him above ground. But there was no fight. It just... He just ended him. And I really like that. It's like, you're not even worth the time it would take to fight you. I'm just gonna chippity chop. I have another point, another quote that I have made here is, I failed Louis once in my life and it wasn't in San Francisco. Why did I owe you my one act of cowardice? That moment where Armand is speaking to Daniel, you see the venom jump out in him, you see him falter. Oh, and then you have the big reveal where Madeline and Claudia are at the table, which apparently that was in a lesbian bar. So I saw that on Twitter. Someone was like, all of the people here are women or female presenting. It looks like a lesbian bar. And I was like, I didn't even pick up on that. They're out to like drinks or dinner or whatever with Louis and Armand. And the moment where Madeline says, why don't you want him to know how much you love him? You know, and Armand gets up to leave and he kisses him on the head, and you have that moment of, if your big head fits through the door. It's the most normal I think that we've seen them, and it was beautiful. Actually, no, I just remembered the moment where Louis told us what Armand's first words to him were, and it was, what was it? I will never hurt you. And Armand goes, and I never have. Yeah, but him knowing, you know, what was going to happen and knowing the plans and directing the fucking play, I kind of want to slap him silly for that. I'm not going to lie to you. The fact that you had Louis, I heard him, maybe I misheard, but it sounded to me like he was calling out for him at the bar when they were being kidnapped and taken away to be taken to the theatre, and Armand just stood there. Again, the laws, but also, fuck your laws, that's your man. Another point that I want to make, and I just thought of this as soon as I stopped recording, is the idea of ownership within relationships in this. And you see it a lot with every relationship that you have, where you see it particularly with Louis. Claudia says to him, you were Lestat's, now you're Armand's. You know, like, who are you outside of that? Who are you before him or whatever? You see it later as well, I think, where Louis turns around and somebody says you're Armand's, and he goes, oh, Armand is mine. And again, when he goes back to Lestat, and Lestat asks him, like, where's your companion? And he goes, like, you know, I'm companion enough for myself these days. You see it with Madeline, which is talking about Claudia, which says to Claudia, is my coven. The idea of, like, clicking together or belonging to somebody or being someone's. And it ties into that whole, like, vampire loneliness that they talked about, that they've explained in the scene with Lestat, where he's crying blood in the theatre and he's talking to that one person that was just like not expecting this when he bought a ticket and turned up. Also, that whole crowd, none of them were suspicious. They thought this really was just a play. They were there watching these actors fight for their lives up on that stage, and they were like, this is normal. Nobody finds this a bit odd, a bit too specific. Nobody. But it ties into the idea of loneliness and the fact that they don't want to be alone. I think it's interesting that we get the reveal that Louis did know about the laws, on the topic of the laws, where Lestat was giving his recollection of things on stage, and it cuts to modern day, and Armand is kind of taking stabs at Lestat, and he says, what was it that he was shaping them into a Lestat-shaped effigy, that he thought Lestat was lying, and then Louis has to kind of interrupt and be like, no, like, I knew, and then we get the reveal of what actually happened the night Claudia was turned, because we saw moments of it, but him looking Lestat in the eye and telling him, I'll never leave you again, I'll be happy for you and for her, begging him to change Claudia, even though he knew, because Lestat tells him about the rules. Him dragging Claudia across the floor, referring to him already, like he was already referring to her as his daughter, as their daughter. He didn't know this girl, he knew nothing about her at that point, and he's dragging her body across the floor. I was like, love, what are you doing? Louis has some unhinged moments, and this was definitely one of them. That's right up there with the meowing at the cat scene, but him saying, like, you know, he did tell me what she would be, I downplayed my role in it. We know unreliable narrator has been going on for a while, because it's Louis' story. Louis is going to try to make himself sound better or be better, and you're going to hide the more undesirable parts of your life that you're ashamed of, and that's what he did. And I'm a Louis defender. And then we got to see the fight revisited too, which we saw it from Claudia's point of view back in season 1, where we follow her, isn't it, from the living room up the stairs to the hallway, and you kind of hear parts of what's going on in the room, but you don't see it. Louis absolutely going off at Lestat and threatening to behead him and then walk his head down to City Hall. And it's not even that gets Lestat. It's the fact that Lestat cops, you're leaving with her. That's what sent Lestat over the wall, because throughout the fight you see him begging, please don't, stay down, Sherry. Like, he doesn't want to fight him. He doesn't want to do this. He knows he can overpower him. He knows he's stronger. And he's like, I don't want to hurt you. But as soon as the thought of Louis leaving, it triggers something in him, because Lestat was abandoned by his maker. He doesn't have anybody else. Lestat has, like, deep-rooted issues. And I think as well, Lestat might see parts of himself in Louis, because Lestat stayed with Armand briefly to learn the powers, and then he left. Louis stayed, got Claudia turned, and then left. Maybe Lestat is feeling a bit burnt. Maybe he's seeing a bit of himself in him, because Louis did promise to never leave him if he turned Claudia. Do you understand? I'm trying to see it from Lestat's point of view. But then you get the breakdown at the fucking trial where he admits, I didn't know that he'd be okay. I didn't know. And he goes off script because you cannot script Lestat. It's Lestat. You're all fools for trying to. But the moment of I'm the one who broke him. Again, it's one of those like, oh, he's lived with this. He has not been okay since this happened. Editing me popping in again. Hi, it's been like 5 hours. I'm still editing this video. I had a thought I must share with the class. So when Lestat admitted on trial, when he went off script, like I just said, and he went off script and Santiago was like, but you knew he'd be okay. I mean, you punched your hand through the priest's chest, you know what I mean? You dropped Louis, you knew he was a vampire. You knew he'd be okay, that he'd heal. Lestat owning up and going, no, I didn't know. I dropped him. I broke him. I'm now viewing that in two ways. I'm viewing it in one way as shame and admittance from Lestat that like, yeah, I actually didn't know and I'm ashamed and he could have died in that moment. But also, it's the exact same point but for the trial. Lestat admitting that is him putting his own life in danger on this stage at this trial because it could be seen as him trying to kill another vampire, which goes against one of the laws. Him admitting, I didn't know that he'd be okay. And Santiago pushing so hard for, but you did. But you did know he'd be fine. It wasn't attempted vampiric murder. And Lestat going, no, I didn't know. He's putting his own life on the line by admitting that on this trial. Because they could turn around, the Council of Vampires, the Council of Fuckheads, could turn around and go, you didn't know he'd be okay? So were you trying to kill him? Was Lestat trying to walk himself into this too? That if Louis goes in this instance at the trial, he does too? But I think one of my favourite points was Claudia breaking out during that scene and her going, can I cry and say I'm sorry too? She was like, this is fucking ridiculous. What, you're just going to forgive him? Okay, can I just say I'm sorry and be done with this? But it's a different set of rules for her. Also, I feel like we got a little bit of a reference to Paul there where when she realises like it's Louis and Lestat. It's just Louis and Lestat and Louis always. And she goes, I think she says like, oh, of course you're not here for me. But it's the line where she goes, I was just a roof shingle that flew off of your house. It reminded me of Paul. And the I could not prevent it is interesting. Because we at this point, we thought Armand saved him. I thought Armand saved him. And then it turns out that it wasn't. It was fucking Lestat. But he just keeps repeating, I could not prevent it. You know, but you think it's in regards to Claudia. It's not. I think it's in regards to this whole thing. Again, the laws, the coven. He had to be there. He didn't have to direct it. Little fucker. He downplayed his part monumentally. He deserves prison, but he won't get the time, in the words of Taylor Swift. But it was Lestat that saved him, and I love that it was Daniel that figured this out. Daniel is a little genius. What a little brainiac. We are so blessed to have him. And we are so blessed to continue to have him once he delves into the world of being a vampire. He's going to be the sassiest little bitch that ever lived. I've forgotten what I was saying. Another note I have is the parallels between her death and the I Don't Like Windows performance. Her life was just, it was so tragic. And even her being stuck in the role that she didn't want to be in the theatre, being a kid forever, that it mirrored her real life. Her dying on the stage where she died in the play. And the last thing that she saw was Lestat looking to him for help for anything, and he couldn't do anything. Now, I was saying about Armand, like, why didn't he try to save Claudia? Why did he only save Louis? Back when I thought it was Armand. Now, it's understandable because if the person who was doing the saving had saved Claudia first with the banishment trick, they would have been expecting it for Louis and it wouldn't have worked. Something would have gone wrong. They would have like put a stop to it. They had one shot at saving Louis and they took it, them being Lestat. He was bleeding from the ears, and we saw that as well when he was ordering the soldiers out of the house. We saw him bleed from the ears and he's weak afterwards. Maybe he thought he wouldn't be able, strong enough to do it a second time. And then we see him in the chair in modern day. We see Lestat in modern day. How long has Louis been back having the visions? Has Lestat just been with him all along mentally? They are all such strong characters. They really are. And like I've said, I find ways to love and cradle and defend all of them. And I just think it's interesting. Like, I got a comment recently that was like, oh, your take on Lestat is so wrong, it's embarrassing. And I'm like, because I was in Louis defense mode. I love Lestat. And here's the thing, I will always say the first thing that comes into my head, especially with these reactions, when I'm doing reactions, it's my first time watching the episode. I'm not going into this with any knowledge. I'm watching it for the first time. My brain, there's fumes coming out of my ears trying to understand what the fuck is going on and keep up. I feel so protective over Louis and I love him. And like I said, certain things regarding his character set me off and they hit something in me. So, you know, especially during the trial when I felt like Louis was being spoken over and death to everyone on that stage wasn't Louis at that point in time, to me. In hindsight, once I've seen the episode, dissected the episode, and seen the following episode, yeah, my opinions have changed. Shocking. I know. Another point I had on the ending, on the finale episode, was the tour guide being so goddamn wrong. The names were wrong. The happenings were kind of off. And you see Louis standing there laughing like he's touring his own story. He's on a tour of his own story. And it's so wrong. I don't even think they name Louis. They get Lestat's name wrong. They get some of the details wrong. Like they said that Louis and his child bride were practicing voodoo. But they don't even name Louis. It's his story and he doesn't even get a name. I also have another point. We're jumping all around in the plot, but I'm sure you guys can keep up. If you've watched this far along, you clearly love the show and you're a freak like me. We have the moment where Armand says, if I'm not with him, I'm nothing. And that mirrored the sentiment that Lestat said earlier in the show. And just the love. The way characters love in this show is intoxicating. Oh, we're back to the burning of the theatre. Okay, these notes are all over the place. How drunk was I last night? The murder scene with the fire was everything. The theatre being burnt down. Using the fire gift Lestat gave him to avenge Claudia. So the fire gift is his gift. Fire is a big theme in this. I also loved that we got Louis mimicking Santiago, making fun of his as well. Nice touch. We got the mention of Magnus. We were in Magnus's lair. We got to hear about the blondes that used to be in the lair because Magnus was just fucked in the head. The blood of Akasha in me. And then him saying he doesn't know who that is. Like, oh. So what did Lestat think in that moment? Because they're both standing in front of him. Did Lestat know that Louis thought that Armand saved him? Or did Lestat think that Louis knew that Lestat saved him but just didn't care? You know what I mean? But leaving him with the image of the two of them kissing, I cannot think of a fate worse. Seriously, I would rather death. If that was me and my two sexy ass exes were making out in front of me, I would be like, this is where I depart the plane of the living. I can't think of anything that would hurt him more. And Louis knew that. But just as characters, they are so... Like even him saying to Lestat in the house, he says, have you been enduring here? And Lestat says, not enduring, living. Like, he's still proud. He's like, no, I'm okay without you. I've been living here. And it's quite fine with my rat catcher. And then Louis turned around and being like, I came to say I'm sorry. And I was mean and I wanted to hurt you. And then Lestat just losing all sense of facade and pretense and the mask slips. It's just, I will never get over that scene. That scene between the two of them in front of the window with the storm rattling is right up there with the being turned on the altar scene from season 1. Because we've seen all of these characters go through everything. You've seen Louis. They've all been through so much pain. Anyway, things I loved about the season. I loved the pacing. I loved the back and forth thing. I loved Armand's storyline and how that was presented to us. His little speech, soliloquy, monologue in front of the art in the art gallery. I loved the deterioration of the relationship between him and Louis, like watching it physically happen and then watching it slowly build back up again when they had, I don't know, refound their love through telling their story, and then watching it crumple like Armand's body did into that wall. I also want to touch on the music because the soundtrack for season 1 is one of my favourite pieces of music ever. And I really feel like we got that tenfold in season 2. I love that we got like piano renditions of songs from season 1, of the songs that we know. I love what they did with Come To Me. That change, come to me you little whore. Louis is stronger than me, because if that were me, I'd have been shedding my clothes as I ran to the piano, even though it was just dreamless that I'd have been shagging the air on the piano. Ooh, should I cut that out? Is that a bit much? Nah. And the music sets the tone. Certain songs are associated with certain characters. Certain characters have their own theme songs and their own songs that go with them. So hearing them change and evolve throughout season 2, it was beautiful. It was stunning. I liked that they kept the spirit of Lestat around, literally. Having Dream Lestat was absolutely genius because it showed that Louis was still haunted by him, but also it gave us, the viewers, our little Lestat fix. I loved the costuming. I absolutely loved the costuming. I loved the set design as well. Like I said, I loved the theatre, but I loved like I said, even though I don't like the Dubai house that him and Armand have, I still love it because it's visually so striking. It reflects them as a couple. I'm sorry, I just remembered the you're boring scene, and that's after hurting my fucking feelings again. Again, Armand lied and fucked up and was a little asshole, but I still understand why he did it, and I feel bad for him. Same way as I felt bad for Lestat in the aftermath of what happened in season 1. So the story can go anywhere from here. We know where it's going. We're getting Vampire Lestat. And he mentioned it, didn't he? He mentioned at the end of this episode going on tour or something. This episode, it wrapped the story up and also opened up a whole other story for season 3. There was like nothing that I didn't like. I mean, I'm trying to think of things that I did not like. Did I make a list? I wasn't a massive fan of the music during the burning down the house, or burning down the theatre scene. That, you know, I mean, it fit the scene. It was chaotic. It was all over the place. I just wasn't a fan of the music in that one scene. It took me out of the scene. I wish we'd seen more of Nicky, which I presume we will moving forward through flashbacks. He was a very important character. Maybe we won't see more of him, because we saw him during that one scene with Lestat when Lestat met Armand. We saw Lestat save him, and then we saw his name on it too. So maybe that's all the Nicky that we're going to get. I wish we had seen Santiago more. I made that point already. I miss Claudia already and Madeline. That as individuals and as a couple, they were absolutely solid. We got to see a criminally low amount of Madeline, actually. Those are the bad thoughts. That's all the bad thoughts that I have. I love this show so much. I'm hoping to get this video up sometime soon, very soon. So I'm sure like I'll have a whole lot more points and stuff to make once I start rewatching. I'm starting to rewatch from season 1 tonight. But yeah, if you guys watch, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. I'm just a big old swirl of emotions. I'm sucked up in the stormy romance of those two, and also Armand, and I feel so bad for everybody involved. And there's times that I wanted to smack people silly, and there's times I wanted to kiss them delicately on the head. That's my conclusion. As always, link to my Patreons in the description down below, where I do a whole bunch of other content if you guys want to check that out. Like I said, the link's in the description. There's Patreon exclusive content like reactions for the X-Files. There's a supernatural commentary going on. We're doing Angel, True Blood, Star Trek, Vampire Diaries. There's live streams, stuff like that. Twitter, Instagram, anywhere else you can find me is also down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you all soon.